Awesome time during the college football season. 2 weeks left before championship weekend. Rivalry weekend's just 1 week away. Huge games today going throughout the weekend here. Talking with Zach Smith, Menace to Sports, right here at the Voice of College Football. Zach, good to see you. How's it going?
It's good to see you, man. It's good. Can't complain, man. The college football playoff picture is getting clearer, I think, maybe.
No doubt. Let's start there. I was going to go another direction, but you brought up the CFP and the wisdom, all that wisdom in the room that tell us exactly how good these teams are. Of course, they know better than any of us. So a couple things stand out to me. Number one, Indiana at 5. I have no issue with that. I think it's a fairly balanced look at, okay, the record says they could be number 1, number 2. Obviously, they're undefeated, but we know what the schedule's been. And they've controlled that schedule. They've played pretty well aside from the Michigan game second half. Then there's this collection of SEC teams that seem to kind of move together. They all move together. Alabama, right. Tennessee, Georgia, Ole Miss, because you can't separate them because A beat B, but C beat A and back and forth. So did anything stand out to you in regards to, okay, what are they telling us here when the rankings were released on Tuesday?
I think they told us that Tennessee's likely not to make it. And they told us they really are devaluing what Indiana's been able to do, and they can't give a good reason, right? Because as much as you want to hate on the fact that Indiana's beaten nobody, which is true, Texas equally has beaten nobody. So like I can't get behind the logic that Texas is above Penn State, who's above Indiana. Like that three-way right there is kind of mind-blowing to me. And outside of that, I don't know what they're basing this off of. Like what are they actually ranking? Are they ranking the best teams, the teams that have the best shot to win it all? Like they'll never tell you what they're ranking, because then there's dichotomies in there, right? It's like, well, then why is Indiana at 5 if that's what you're ranking? And it's mind-blowing to me, because the big 4 in the SEC, obviously outside of Texas, are the real conversations, right? All these 2-loss SEC teams. And why Alabama is the highest ranked one is confusing to me. Like if you said, who is the best complete team? It's Ole Miss. Who's the most lethal, like could beat somebody? Probably Bama. The second best complete team is Tennessee. I mean, what Georgia and Bama have done this year, I mean, they're reliant on an inconsistent quarterback. 1 week it looks like a Heisman performance, the next week it's terrible. And so how you can not pay attention to that when you rank teams, because what is the likelihood that Carson Beck can go 4 games in a row playing like he played against Tennessee? I think it's almost zero based on what I've watched all year.
The thing with the committee, Zach, a lot of people criticize them for having no idea what they're doing. They're spitballing. I won't go to that extreme. This is what I think it is. They've got a punch list that's been pretty consistent throughout the years. It's strength of schedule, eyeball test. It's best win. It's, do you have any good losses? Do you have any egregious, awful Notre Dame, Northern Illinois kind of losses? Like they have a punch list. What's inconsistent is they use it however they want to, depending on the team. They grab different criteria depending on the situation and what they want to spit out.
Absolutely. They absolutely do. And the one that gets me, and I kind of went on a rant today about it, is the eye test. Like, what does that mean exactly? Because if I think there's only one team that passes the eye test better than Indiana, and that's Oregon. Like, who else passes the eye test? Week in, week out, they deliver the same performance, which is a victory, not even really a close victory, and they look complete, offense, defense, kicking game. You can't say Georgia or Bama. You can't say Tennessee. I mean, who is it? I think Indiana passes the eye test as well as anybody. Now, if it's just blue chip ratio, okay, yeah, Bama got them. Like Penn State has higher rated recruits than Indiana. Texas has higher rated recruits than Indiana. But I think Texas is one of the most one of the teams in the country that has the most fraudulent tendencies, where if they go out and lose to A&M, I think they should fall out of the playoff picture as a 2-loss team that lost to their only 2 teams that are worth a crap. Like, how are they in at that point?
And this is where I think somebody like you has a great perspective on it, because if you really want to boil down what the committee's asked to do, it's kind of twofold. Number one, analyze metrics, analytics, all that to tell us, okay, statistically, this is what the stats are telling us about game control and how well these teams perform. Then the other is just pop on the video and watch them play, where you would be able to sit there and go, hey, don't tell me anything about stats. Don't want to hear it. I just want to watch these two teams play, and I'll let you know who I think really is really good and who has some flaws. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a tension between those two types of analysis.
Absolutely. And I think you can figure out. I mean, the reality is we went from 4 teams to 12 teams. So the 13th team doesn't get in. Who cares? We got 12 in. Like, we got 8 extra teams in. Like, we're going to, and this is an argument that could go on forever. The moral of the story is, hey, Tennessee, you want to make it? Don't lose to an average at best Arkansas team. And if you do, you have no say. Go play in the Belk Bowl or wherever you're going. And you know what? You can blame that loss to Arkansas as to why. Bama loses to Vanderbilt. I get it. Diego Pavia had just a ridiculous performance, and Jalen Milroe played terrible. That's called football. I think once you have multiple losses, you lose all right to complain or argue. Just go. It'd be one thing if Tennessee's 2 losses were to Texas and Bama, like the highest rated SEC teams. They lost to Arkansas. You got nothing to say. Don't lose to Arkansas. Championship teams don't.
And that's what I love about the expanded playoff, because we went from a place where theoretically, now this never happened, all 5 conference champions could have went undefeated and through their conference championship game, and we would be screwed because one of them would have to sit. So nothing guaranteed you for the playoff. So this at least honors the conference championships and honors the best teams in the country. And then, hey, if you can't make a 12 seed, you got nothing to complain about. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to sit here and analyze it and say, I think they should have been in ahead of them, but I'm not going to say they should complain about it because, hey, they're sitting at 9-3 in the SEC. You know what? If you're at that point, you've got nothing to complain about. Win your conference or do something better.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you look at, it's just funny that with all the realignment, that the 3 teams that are challenging in the Big 12 just joined the Big 12.
I know.
BYU, Arizona State, and Colorado, of course. Who do you like there? I know people are going to want to see Colorado in the playoffs because of Dion and Shadur, and Travis Hunter's ridiculous. And for me and my money, if we truly give the Heisman Trophy to the best player in the country, you just give it to Travis Hunter and you forget about it. So how do you shake out those teams in regards to, do you think any one of them can actually compete with the big boys in the Big Ten and the SEC?
No, I don't. I mean, I think Shadur and Colorado have the best chance because they have an NFL quarterback and they have the best player in college football. So they have the best chance, but I don't think they have a team that can do that. I think it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out. I really hope Army beats Notre Dame and this thing gets really, really interesting quick. Because the reality is that Big 12 champion could get left out. If Army beats Notre Dame and beats them solid and jumps ahead of whoever the Big 12 champion is, can you imagine if the Big 12 champion was the conference champion that got left out? It would be incredible. But I saw this, a Reddit college football page put it up, and it's not that far-fetched. Can you imagine if Oregon wins the Big 10, which they're supposed to, right, on paper, Texas wins the SEC, SMU wins the ACC, Colorado wins the Big 12, and Army wins the AAC. That's 5 conference champions from teams that weren't in that conference last year.
That is crazy, and it's not a stretch.
No.
That is crazy. Yeah, I want the committee to squirm. So anything that can be done, which is obviously Army, I want chaos to the extent. And what we're seeing right now in the SEC is bringing us to the brink of that, where there's no great team this year. So there's no 12-0. There's not even possibly an 11-1. We shall see. Yeah, there's glut of 10-2 teams, and the committee may have to make a decision that, Georgia was just that much better than, well, on the field, they were a lot better than Tennessee, but their resume is only that much better, or Ole Miss is only that much better, but somebody's going to have to get left out. It can't be an SEC playoff here.
Right. They got a heck of a problem on their hands. And like always, I'm sure there's going to be some chaos left that could clarify it for them. But I mean, I'm looking at it like, all right, I've studied all the teams in the top 12. I mean, you get down to BYU, I can honestly tell you I've watched 0 game films of BYU, just some TV stuff. But I look at it and I think Texas is the most likely fraudulent SEC team on the list, and they're the ones sitting atop the conference. And then I look at A&M, probably the second most fraudulent SEC team on the list, and those two are going to play to go to Atlanta. It's just wild how it all worked out and how scheduling worked out. And I mean, you kind of feel bad for Georgia having to play the top 3 ranked SEC teams.
Yeah, and that's something that I major on during the offseason is breaking down these schedules, and it was pretty easy to see. Okay, Texas, I don't know who they paid off to get this schedule, and then Oklahoma gets completely screwed. How do they come up with these schedules?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things, the byproducts of going divisionless. And I get the whole knock against divisions, and we saw it forever in the Big Ten. Best teams play the 4th or 5th best team in the conference. So I get that, but this is what it's creating with these massive conferences is we've got tiebreakers between teams that don't even see each other. And so you're like, oh, we're comparing 3 teams for first place and they didn't even play each other. So now we're going down to these crazy, like, does it really matter if a team in a conference, their winning percentage against common opponents is going to be 48% and somebody else is 42%? Like, we're going to actually say they're better based on a 5th tiebreaker?
It doesn't make sense because I get the Indiana situation, right? Or the TCU situation where you're like, when you build the schedule, you're like, holy, I had no idea Indiana was going to be a 10-0 football team. But when you're talking about Georgia, they before the year, everyone, you, me, shoot, my 4-year-old son would have said that Texas, Bama, Ole Miss, Tennessee are going to be in playoff contention. And they gave Georgia all 4. Like, did you not see that coming?
Yeah.
It's just wild to me.
Yeah. And these are the same people in the SEC. And I credit the conference for being in front of the curve on almost everything else involving marketing, branding, and all that other business. But when it comes to scheduling, this is the same league that mandated that South Carolina and Texas A&M, you can't come up with 2 programs that have less to do with one another in a league that they play every year, but everybody else is going to rotate 7 years and you're not going to see anybody for 7 years. There was no reason to. Anyway, I've sliced and diced the SEC schedule and how it could have been done much better for sure. Zach Smith here from Menace to Sports. Of course, that's your destination for great football talk each and every Monday through Friday, noon Eastern time. It's right here on YouTube, Menace to Sports. So let's get to some of these teams. Indiana, are they any good?
They're really good.
Jump on this, Zach, I'll say this. If somebody was said to me before the season, Indiana is going to be 10-0, I would, of course, not believed it. But then I would have said, okay, they had a scoop and score, I'm sure, in one of those games. They blocked a field goal to win 31-28. You know, a lot of just skating by Michigan State and Maryland and those kind of teams. No, game control, dominance almost the entire way.
You know what? I mean, I'm all in on the Kurt Signetti project. I can tell you that much because, I mean, he talks the talk and his team walks the walk. I mean, when I watch Indiana, and I'm about to break down the only game I haven't broke down the film is the Michigan game, and I'm going to do that after the show. But they do everything. I would say they're like a great high school team, and I mean that as a compliment, not as any disrespect. Where they block extremely well, they tackle extremely well. They don't make many mental mistakes. They're in their proper gaps. They make it hard on the other team where you have to physically one-on-one beat them. And there's not a lot of that in college football. There's a lot of like, what was Carson Beck looking at? He threw it right to the curl defender. Like there's a lot of inconsistencies in fundamentals in college football, and Indiana has none. They are, I don't want to say flawless, but they are one of the best coached teams in the country. And I think that's evident. A 10-0 Indiana team would have to be, right, for them to go 10-0. And they really found gold in the Ohio U transfer, Curtis Rourke. I mean, this is a kid that's from Canada, so didn't get recruited very highly, went to OU, and I didn't watch him much, but when I do quarterback analysis the last 2 years, he was always up there at the top. And I'm like, this kid from OU must be balling. Sure enough, he goes to Indiana, and he is precision in a quarterback. They have mastered I was talking to one of my former players about it. Indiana doesn't have the skill to just beat you in man coverage, right? They're not going to get open a lot. Like they don't have freak receivers. They have a good solid receiving core, but he has mastered ball placement and back shoulder throws and throwing guys open to where you don't have to get open. He's like, I got you. I'll handle it. You just run your route. I'll put the ball where it needs to be. And it's really fun to watch as a football coach. Like it is exciting to watch just because they are so well coached and they execute at a high level. And I think they're going to give Ohio State problems this weekend. I know people want to act like, oh, Ohio State's going to blow them out. They're capable of it, but I think Indiana is going to give Ohio State's offense specifically some problems.
I was still trying to figure out whether Curt Cignetti thinks because he's taken over an underdog program and he's got to talk a big talk, that's not that he's not being himself, but that if he was taking over Texas or Michigan, that he would act a little bit different. Because I enjoy it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
He's just, even when he's not in somebody's face about something, there's a little chip on his shoulder. And like you mentioned the Michigan game. So my memory of the Michigan game was they hit 3 or 4 big pass plays in the first half. They had 2 nice drives. They went up 17-3. Second half, Michigan just started to dominate their offensive line. Yep. And they only had 18 yards in the second half on like 25 plays. And Michigan, obviously, if they had any semblance of an offense, would have won the game. But
no doubt.
That's a joke. But so Cignetti, after the game, it's like he's half complimenting Michigan, but he's half like insulting them at the same time. The guy's just so quirky and
oh yeah,
I think he's fun to watch and listen to. He's hilarious.
Oh, I knew him when he was at Bama, kind of didn't know him personally, but I'd met him and I'd heard about him and I knew about him. And just watching him now step in the limelight. And I mean, just the audaciousness to walk into Indiana and go to a basketball game pep rally and say Michigan and Ohio State suck at Indiana is wild. So much so that I didn't even hear about it when he did it. No, I never saw it on social media. People were just kind of like, oh, this guy's nuts. Now here we are 10-0 later, already beat Michigan and he's got his sights set on Ohio State. Like you can't not like this guy.
So Zach, you basically answered my question that Indiana's a legit team and anything can happen in one game. And I don't think anybody's going to be shocked if it's 42-17 and they just didn't have a great game. And Ohio State's got that kind of talent, but that they can play with Ohio State on a good day. Obviously, they're going to have to play over their heads, but for us to translate this performance to what we were talking about before in the CFP, there's so much talk with this layer of SEC 10-2 teams that we expect that Indiana, if they don't, what's going to interest me is the close loss is going to be, obviously, if they win, you could argue number one in the country.
Absolutely.
They lose this game, but they look good. They lose 31-24.
Yeah.
I think we've got a pretty good judgment on it. Okay, this team's legit. If it gets into that, like, this is where people need to watch games and understand football rather than, okay, it was 38-20. That's a blowout. But it might have been a 3-point game going into the fourth quarter, and they're really good. And Ohio State just made a couple plays and broke it open, and they're going to get dogged for losing by 18 points. And then there they go. Once they hit those SEC 4, if they're decided they're going to be behind 1, they're going to drop them behind all 4, and they're going to plummet to like 9 or 10. And then who knows what's going to happen. So, where did they have to hit that sweet spot for you to be able to be like, okay, they're a playoff team?
Yeah. I mean, I think they can't get blown out, like just obliterated. I mean, if they keep it within, a 17, 14 point loss, I think they'll certainly fall, but they won't fall out. If it gets over 17, you start getting 21, 24, 20. This will be really easy for the ESPN talking heads to push them out. And I think Chris and I talked about it on our show today. I think what ESPN and all the narratives are pushing right now, a lot of people think they're pushing for Indiana to fall completely out with a close, like with a loss. I think they're just pushing for when they lose, if they lose, even if it's close, they'll drop far enough down where now they have to go on the road. in the playoffs. They don't get a home game at Indiana. I think that's what they're really trying to guarantee right now, is that one of these SEC teams gets a home game, because if they don't drop them far enough, you're talking about your 4 home playoff games could be Columbus, Ohio, Happy Valley in Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Notre Dame. And now all those Southern teams have to go to the snow. I don't think they want all of them to have to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And talk about this committee's control and the authority that they have and the power in this sport with these selections. It also comes down to this home field, because in all these models we see every week and we look at the seedings, that 8-9 decision, I guarantee those 2 teams are going to be basically inseparable. We could make an argument 8 should be 9 and 9 should be 8, and they're going to be making a decision of whether maybe Alabama goes to Bloomington, Indiana, or Indiana goes to Tuscaloosa. And that's huge.
Huge.
And even the 7-10 could probably be argued, I'm sure. So that's going to be a big decision.
Like, I know it's a different committee and every year's different. And this year we're so fortunate to have Ward Manuel running it. I mean, the AD that just had such a stellar year. He earned that spot because Michigan did everything right and just perfect. No issues. But there's still themes, like the committees still kind of operate like previous committees. And I just think back to the TCU Ohio State flip when TCU lost the Big 12 championship game. They're going to get the matchups they want in the cities they want, and they'll have some nonsense to explain it to you that won't apply to other scenarios, but they're going to set it up how they want it to be set up.
No doubt. Zach Smith here from Menace to Sports. It's your destination every weekday, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern time, right here on YouTube. So I'm going to stay with this Indiana-Ohio State game. So to me, we all hate that Seth McLaughlin is done for the year from a competitive standpoint and wanting to see these teams to be at their best, but obviously feel for him because, man, the accolades were rolling in like All-America at mid-season, AP Sporting News on down the line. It played a great first half, 34 starts. So that's obviously a huge loss. But if this Ohio State team plays to its max, are they the best team in the country?
I'm going to have to see how the offensive line looks, because I think they hit a stride when they moved Donovan Jackson out to left tackle. And you saw a change, and I'm he's not a great tackle. He's serviceable. He is a great guard. That the fact that he can play left tackle is wild. But I watch other factors, not just how they block and assignments, but I'm watching this kid. He has a whole different personality. Like after a big run, he's like yelling, getting in lineman's face, and I'm like, this is what I've been waiting to see, is does this team have any dog in them? Like, do they have a leader like we had in Curtis Grant in 2014 that just, he can pull stuff out of guys? And I think they found one up front. So I'm really curious to see how this now, I guess this will be the 7th or 8th lineman, best lineman is going to be starting for Ohio State. How's he going to play? Because he certainly, I've been a part of, obviously famously the 2014 national championship where Cardale Jones, a 3rd string quarterback, he plays out of his mind for 3 games. And then the next year didn't play really well. But for those 3 games, because of Curtis Grant, because of leadership, that kid played above any level he's ever played football at. And I want to see if that's going to happen, because if that does happen, I think they're the best team in the country. If it doesn't, now I'm nervous. I'm nervous about, can they run the football? Can they protect Will Howard? Like, offensively, I think the defense is lights out. They have some issues at corner, holding a little bit. Denzel Burke's been underperformed this year, but I think the defense is going to be solid. The offense should be, if the offensive line keeps on the trajectory they were on.
The thing about Denzel Burke, and correct me if I'm wrong, so we know what happened against Oregon. He looked bad. That was an embarrassing game for him, and we all know it. Then he comes back the next week, and I was really watching him against Nebraska, and I was thinking, okay, he's not getting challenged downfield. He can't do anything about that. But he showed up as a complete corner, and he was before that. But it seemed like he came back with a little determination that I'm going to make plays in the backfield. I'm going to jam up receivers at the line. I'm going to be a physical player. And then we're obviously waiting for him to be challenged downfield again. And he was a little bit against Purdue or Northwestern, I should say. And, Yeah, to see how he meets that challenge, because he shows me something as a player in that he's got some grit to come back and want to be a physical complete corner, but just that issue that he had against Oregon, and see if that pops up in a Big Ten title game.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, he's going to have to get his get back in Indianapolis, assuming they make it. Because I guess the good news that I keep reminding Buckeye fans is I don't see a receiving core like Oregon out there. I mean, I think them and Ohio State have the two best receiving cores in the country, and not that that's you're still gonna have to face it. You're still gonna have to stop it, but it's not going to be something that every week in, week out that someone's going to have that much electricity in the receiver room. I mean, there's other really good receivers out there like Ryan Williams at Bama. There's the list of all of them, but not three like Oregon has.
Zach, let me hit you up on Miami, since you've seen them play and scouted them on tape, because it seems like they're a high ceiling, low floor team. We've seen them play bad against pretty marginal teams. They've escaped a bunch of times. They finally got knocked down by Georgia Tech. But what's your thoughts about Miami? The pass defense isn't good, but Cam Wart's a hell of a player and fun to watch.
He's something. He's probably my favorite player to watch in the country, because you rarely know what he's going to do.
No.
and he's really effective, but he makes some throws. You're like, oh no, okay, that was okay. He just makes some questionable decisions that seem to work out for him. He's a baller. Yeah, like you said, the secondary is depleted. I don't see Miami as a team that can win a playoff game unless they get blessed with like Boise or some matchup where they have the talent edge. I just think they have too many holes that if they're going to go against a true playoff team, they're going to lose a football game. But Cam Ward's special. I mean, I think he's really, really good.
The thing I wonder with him, and again, it's fun to watch, but this guy, like, I don't know how many pirouettes a quarterback can do, like in the pocket and bounce
Right.
off linemen and circle around 18 times. I saw him throw a ball against Duke. It got picked off, where it wasn't like he was running toward the right sideline and threw it all the way. He was like, he had stopped and he's just standing, and his toes are practically on the sideline. And then he just decides to throw it all the way across the field, and it gets picked off. So I guess I'm just thinking, with his ball security issues, and he had some of these at Washington State, not just throwing picks, but because of the way he acts in the pocket, that when he plays bigger, better, faster defenders, that could be an issue too.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, he's fun to watch. He reminds me of kind of, I don't want to say Johnny Manziel, but of that style, right? Just reckless, so fun to watch. But like, can you really have the ultimate success with a guy that plays like that? I don't know that you can. And I not to change topics, but a lot of people are up here in Ohio are begging the Browns to draft him. And I'm a Browns fan, and I really don't want that to happen.
Yeah. Zach Smith, Menace to Sports. Always a good time with Zach and Chris. They tear it up. It's one of the best shows on college football and sports across the board. Zach, always a good time talking to you. Appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely. I always have fun. I appreciate you having me on.